and we are good. Thank you. I just want to first thank you for your time.
Yes, glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we spoke the other day, and like I said, I just want to have a conversation and expose this as much to the people that need to hear this as possible.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Thank you again. Now, for starters, Jim Clyburn, that would be your opponent in this race, correct?
Yes, he is the incumbent, and he's been there for 30. Well, this will be 32 years, and he's 84 years old, so he's been there a minute.
Okay, so he would be a career-long, lifelong Democrat, essentially.
Yes, I would classify him as a career politician. 32 years is a long time.
Yes. Okay, that's what I was heading towards. Now, if I'm not mistaken, in the 2020, at the end of the 2020 election, Clyburn had a highlight on him. He had the spotlight on him at the moment. He was saying that, well, Joe Biden credited him for saving the election, which they credited together, maybe that Black women saved the election or democracy at the time. Are you familiar with that time period or?
Well, I know there was a crucial point in the Democratic Party primary where folks really here in South Carolina, Democrats in South Carolina really didn't know who to support. And Mr. Clyburn endorsed Joe Biden. And that endorsement led to him winning South Carolina and every other primary after that. And so, President Biden is not ashamed when he says he wouldn't be there if it wasn't for James Clyburn.
Right. And now when we fast forward today, it seems to me that he would not want to take credit for today's economy and just where we're at as a country, or would you disagree with that?
Well, I always ask this question, Cam, what have we received as a result of Mr. Biden being in office from Representative Clyburn's endorsement? And you look over the last 4 years, we've had record high inflation, high unemployment, gas prices have increased, food prices have increased astronomically, including rent, housing, medicine, everything has gone up. And so folks are really struggling right now with the economy the way it is. And a lot of that has to do with the policies of the Biden-Harris administration, which again would not be there but for our representative at the time, Mr. Clyburn. His influence helped to make that happen. So he is just as responsible for what has been going on over the last 4 years as Mr. Biden.
Now, I'm not seeing it on mainstream news as much, but I am seeing it in my day-to-day that there seems to be a movement of Black men moving to the Republican Party. Are you seeing that or hearing that as you campaign?
Yes. I make you laugh. My cousin, one of my first cousins, I saw him in Walmart, and he told me, he said, "Duke, I'm voting for Trump." I almost fell down in the store. I literally almost fell down in the store, and I asked him. I said, why the change? Because he was definitely against Trump, 100%. And I asked him what changed, and he said, well, he started, did a little bit more research and found out that, hey, this is his exact words. He never did anything to hurt me.
Correct. I would 100% agree with that statement. Now, it seems that from the outside looking in, when you all are running against Democrat Party here in South Carolina, it seems that you're kind of running against a machine, or is that just how it seems to me?
Well, the Democratic Party, they definitely have a system in place, and that system is to encourage folks to vote straight Democrat ticket. And I always tell people, and I'm telling people now more than ever, it's time to vote for the person, not the party. Both parties have issues, and so you have to really research the candidates and find out which candidate who you feel is going to best do the job for you, and vote for that person regardless of party affiliation. And so The days of voting straight Democrat ticket or straight Republican ticket, I believe those days are over. I think more folks now are looking at each candidate, assessing their strengths and weaknesses, and deciding which one is going to do the best for me and my family.
Now, growing up in South Carolina, did you grow up in a Democrat influenced area or family, or did you grow up in a conservative influenced area or family?
No, my parents were staunch Democrats, Cam. My dad was a lifelong Democrat. He was the first African American to serve on the Carlton County City Council.
Wow.
And
achievement.
yeah, it was huge. It was huge. And so I've always been around politics. And I remember when I graduated from South Carolina State, my first election that I can vote in, it was at that time Bill Clinton was running for president. The Republican Party nominee was George H. Bush.
Mm-hmm.
And the third party candidate or Reform Party was Ross Perot. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling my dad, I say, hey, Dad, you know what? I like Ross Perot. You know, he about business. You know, I think I can roll with him. Right. And my dad said, boy, you better go in there and vote for Bill Clinton.
Right. Now, when the Obama era came, did you feel inspired, or did you feel that this was a time of change, or did you feel that maybe you were being set up for the letdown?
You know, I really wasn't that excited as others were. I was optimistic because of the fact that former President Obama promised hope and change.
Right.
And unfortunately, that didn't happen when he got into office. The racial divide got larger. We had a recession that just really, it was really sad. At that time, I was in South Florida. You know, I had graduated from South Carolina State with my degree in English education, taught public school, and then went in the newspaper business and published for 6.5 years. And then I moved to South Florida to go to law school. So when I went down to law school, all the signs in the Hispanic community were saying Viva Bush. By the time I left, it was all saying Si se puede, which means yes, we can. So what I learned is that our Hispanic brothers and sisters, they're not into party affiliation. Is who going to do something to help my community, and they don't care whether you're Democrat or Republican. Is whose policies is going to best help move us in the right direction. And so at that time, I think Mr. Obama was promoting the Dreamers Act, and so there was hope and change, but it didn't seem like there was a lot of hope going on during that time period during the Obama administration. But one thing I would credit the Obama administration with doing is under the Affordable Care Act, the getting rid of the pre-existing condition that kept a lot of folks from being able to get health insurance. I think that was huge to remove that barrier, because a lot of people, I have a son with sickle cell anemia, and he could never get any health insurance, and it's a genetic disorder, but for the Obama administration changing that, he wouldn't be able to have any health insurance.
So at the end of Obama's 8 years, were you satisfied with his presidency, or were you unsatisfied?
I was unsatisfied because of the economic situation and the turmoil that was going on around the world. In addition to that, we just saw, how can I say it? People were supposed to be coming together, but things got further and further apart. We also, on an international stage, I believe that the United States standing in the world came down instead of going up. There was never really a plan to address the issues concerning the inner cities, and not only that, but rural communities and education. And we also saw during that time period crime start going up, and it has continued to go up and is up now. So
So you mentioned rural areas, and one thing I did notice about the Democrat Party is that they really don't seem to really care about rural America, just in my personal opinion. So now when we look at what's going on with the recent hurricane, which happened to hit what seems like rural areas or remote areas in the mountains and things like that, why are the Democrats essentially, they say they have no money with FEMA, so they would be to blame for that because they were in charge of that budget. So why would they just let America wash away? It looks like this is worse than Katrina. While this is being an election year, is that just their strategy to just completely discombobulate rural America, or do they just not care about rural America, or is it just a mixture of both?
that's a good question. I honestly don't have an answer. I can't speculate on what I think the Democrats' mindset is. All I know is their policies tend to result in more government dependence, more depending on the government instead of depending on God. And I believe that's something that our country needs to get back to. We need to get back to trusting in God and not the government. And the reason I say that is when you look at the corruption that is spiraled out of control in the government and high levels of the government, the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service, all of these institutions, even the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, and the CDC, all of these pillars of our democracy with corruption, you folks are like, well, who can I trust? And I'm like, well, when you look at the back of our currency, it still says in God we trust. That's been on there since the beginning. And it's saying that we need to put our trust and confidence in God. And I believe that's something that we need to get back to in our country.
So with the distrust being in these three-letter organizations, but specifically in the FDA, does Robert F. Kennedy's endorsement of Trump, does that make you feel more comfortable with the Trump administration going into 2025? You're going into? Yeah, 2025.
Well, I think one of the main issues regarding the issue that Robert Kennedy had was dealing with vaccinations. And we saw during the Biden administration, his mandatory vaccinations for pretty much the whole federal government and anybody who had anything associated, which would include first responders, the military, even teachers, medical, nurses, doctors, the whole nine, because they all have some tie into the federal government. And I always felt that, the vaccine should be a choice, not a mandate, not to force people to take it. And when you look at what has been the result of the vaccine, whereby, folks had to sign off that they couldn't sue the pharmaceutical company if they had any type of reaction to it or anything like that. And I always felt that was wrong to say, if you don't take a vaccine, you will lose your job. That to me was an overreach,
right,
of the government. And I think Mr. Kennedy's position of being a person who didn't really support vaccinations, I think that was one of the reasons he decided to endorse President Trump.
Right. And during that time period as well, I think it highlighted how important local officials became, because you had states like Florida that were thriving while the mainstream media was trying to say that everyone who would go there would die. And certain other states, like you were saying, were just almost going along with the federal government, that they wanted everything and everyone vaccinated. They started with the mask, they started with the social distancing, and then it just got more corrupt as the time went. And like you said, those three-letter organizations, Dr. Fauci and just these same characters, they were able to get away with a whole lot under that time. And I'm a little confused, which kind of goes into my second question on why is there a large number, blacks vote Democrat at 97%. So what is it that I can see that you said your cousin or uncle that you saw in Walmart can see, that you can see, that other people are either refusing to see or just can't see in the black community, because that's the community we come from. So I'm almost confused at this point on how to even approach our counterparts about this?
Well, Cam, there's several issues going as far back as after the Civil War. The federal government has been there to provide protection, provide support, provide help for freedmen after the Civil War, and the African American community has always found, I'm going to use the word, support and help from the federal government when the states were instituting things like Jim Crow laws and instituting other things to keep and suppress African Americans from being able to move up. The federal government has always been there. And so the Democratic Party has been the party that has been promoting more federal government. So now, as time has passed, I believe more African Americans are saying, you know what, we're tired of eating the crumbs off the table. You know, we want to seat at the table. And not only do we want to seat at the table, we want to decide what's for dinner. We're no longer satisfied with the crumbs. We want what should be our American dream. We want to have a nice house. We want to live in a nice neighborhood. We want to have a nice vehicle. We want to be able to take our family on vacation. We want those things in a safe place to live. And so now there's a shift in a movement from folks saying, okay, I'm more open, I'm more independent now. I'm not saying more African Americans are saying I'm Republican. What they're saying is I'm willing to vote for the person, not the party. I'm more open now because they have seen the Democratic Party candidates come to the churches year after year, make promises. Then you don't see them again. And then the community doesn't change, it gets worse.
So can we pause on that 1 second? Because I grew up in a Black church and I am confused, frustrated, sick to my stomach almost about what's going on with this Divine Nine to Democrat pipeline, but specifically it's deeply rooted in the Black church, in all denominations. So why it's almost like the Black church is corrupt, but they're doing it intentionally. It's confusing at this point because they're on one end, you want to say we believe in God, we believe in Jesus, but on the other end, we're voting for tampons in boys' bathrooms. And I don't mean to derail there, but how did Black people get to this point? I'm confused.
Well, again, during the civil rights movement, and again, I was born in 72, so this is before I was born. But from my understanding, during the civil rights movement, up until that point, most African Americans voted Republican. We were in the Republican Party. And then civil rights legislation came about, and again, more Republicans by percentage supported the civil rights legislation than Democrats. But what happened, from my understanding, is that, and I don't agree, but I hear this all the time, that there was some type of shift. Yeah, the party switch. Okay, I disagree with that. I don't think that.
If we gave them that credit that the parties flipped, that would mean it would in due history repeats itself. It would be time to flip back.
Well, I would agree, and I think there's a lot to be said about that. But me personally, I don't think there was any switch at all, because the reason I say that is because the Democratic Party has always began as the party that wanted to keep slavery. The Republican Party was a party of abolitionists. They wanted to abolish slavery.
Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
That's correct. And so when you look at situations now, we have in this country, I'm going to call it economic slavery. And we have economic slavery, and primarily you see a higher percentage of that economic slavery in the African American community because of the fact that, let's say if you're on Social Security disability, it says that you can't make but so much money in order to qualify for these benefits. So what that does is that makes people not work as much as they could because they feel they're going to lose their benefits.
Mhm.
The same thing with housing, the same thing with SNAP and EBT and food stamp assistance. Folks have to stay in a certain economic level to be able to qualify to get these benefits from the government. And so what that does is that decentivizes folks from going out and working, because in essence, it's more beneficial for me not to go out and work than it is for me to go out and work. Because if I go out and make too much, I'm going to lose my benefits and being able to survive. And that's the issue right now. The Democratic Party and their policies, they keep folks in a position where they're just surviving, Cam. They're not thriving, they're just surviving.
Yeah, it seems like Black Democrats don't want okay. So I can understand, one generation deciding that, okay, we just take our fate. But it seems like that generation in our community of Black Democrats don't even want generational wealth for their children. It seems like they want generational help for their children as well, just by politically. If you look where they're aligned politically, they're aligning their children to need help. So it confuses me in thousands of different ways, but it seems like any time, and we saw this during the first Trump presidency, that Blacks begin to kind of crawl out of that mindset, or I think naturally things change with time. So to keep someone in a certain mindset for such a long time is unnatural to me. So I think during the Trump era, we saw Black men in general, Blacks in general, beginning to just go into entrepreneurship more, succeed more, not have such this poverty mindset as much as it once was under Obama. But then they bring out the Democrat shields every time that seems to happen in my lifetime. Because I think I've only seen one good president, which was Trump. So from what I've seen, anytime that there's some type of momentum for Blacks to just start going in a more prosperous way, big army of Jim Clyburns, an army of Charlemagne's, they come and they ridicule that type of behavior, to where they have demonized capitalism in the Black community through people like Kamala Harris, but they would glorify socialism, communist policies. But if you look in our community, we still have a very conservative mindset with certain things. So that's why the Black church really confuses me as well, because they ask for a lot of money. So it also would aware me that they would probably be willing to sell out for the right amount of money as well. It's not something that I would like to see or like to admit, but I think that maybe that's what's going on.
Well, one of the it's and unfortunately it's a very powerful tool, and that tool that I see being used a lot in the Democratic Party through their operatives is shaming people. I'm going to shame you if you think differently, shame you if you want to think independently, shame you if you decide that you want to do something different. And we saw a great example of that with President Joe Biden. Some comments that he made. He said, well, if you vote for Trump, you're not Black enough, and
I'm so confused on how he was able to just get off with saying that, because there's no way that a Black Republican, a white Republican, a Black independent couldn't even say that. So the things that they bluntly can get off with is nothing but red flags to me. And maybe the brainwashing is just that deep in our community, which really hurts to see.
Well, you have a lot of the national news, a lot of your national news organizations, they're promoting the rhetoric that Republicans are racist, Republicans are haters, Republicans are mean-spirited, and etc. And if you're African American conservative, then you are somehow brainwashed. You're an Uncle Tom. You have lost your way. And the African American community is not monolithic. We don't all think alike. We don't all dress alike. We don't all, we have diversity within us. And so if you look at how we have been, our voting patterns for the last 40, 50 years, and ask yourself, have I done better being loyal to the Democratic Party Am I doing better? Is my family doing better? Do we have more crime or less crime in my neighborhood? Is my son or daughter learning more or less in school? How do I feel as an American? And I can tell you the answer to many of those questions, especially in the African American community, is no, things have not gotten better. We still remain at the top of everything that's bad and on the bottom of everything that's good. And so I tell people we have to really look at how we vote and change our leaders, because I'll share this with you. When you have a good leader, good things happen. When you have a bad leader, bad things happen. And
I think you're proving a great point, because when you bring up these Raphael Warnock, you know, he's a senator out of Georgia, but if you look at his district, it's not thriving. Blacks there are not doing well. Poverty is all over the place, and I have to credit the Democrats for being able to package poverty up the way they do, because the way that Black people accept it with open arms and they will support these people, is quite astounding. Because Raphael Warnock is favored, but he's that exact type of leader, in my opinion, that we should be trying to get out of the community, get rid of, because they're going to go with these Democrat policies. They're being led by Democrat policies. Before I really crossed over to from the Democrat Party to the Republicans, the last guy I was working with, a senator, it was Plan B. It was Planned Parenthood was the big pusher. All on their flyers. That's their big sponsor. So I mean, no matter what your mindset is in that party, you have to go with the agenda. And to me, every party has an agenda. But as a people, I think that we should look at what benefits us, the most as a people, which clearly is not the Democrat Party.
I would agree with that 100%. That's why, again, Cam, I'm encouraging people, vote for the person. Let's stop voting just because we've been told to do something. Like I said, my dad told me when I first could vote, I said, Dad, I like Ross Perot. I think he'll make a good president. He was about business. Mm-hmm. And my dad said, boy, you better go in there and vote for Bill Clinton. And you know what? I went in there and I voted for Bill Clinton because I was young then. I was a younger man then, and I wanted to obey and do what my father told me to do. But as I got older, and I realized, the Democratic Party, their policies are not bringing about the prosperity and progress that they should be. For example, my opponent, Mr. Clyburn, he's 84 years old. He's been there 32 years. Uh-huh. His district, the 6th congressional district in 2022 was the 6th poorest congressional district in the entire country. Wow. So that means only 5 other out of 435 congressional districts, we were the 6th poorest. Wow. And that number is probably worse now because of the economy. Right. And we are the poorest and have been the poorest district in South Carolina for years, 30 plus years.
Well, why does it seem that the Black Democrats have to face a lot of poverty? But it seems that white liberals, white Democrats, they really seem to be thriving.
Well, and the answer to that question is, believe it or not, there's money in poverty.
Okay. Wow.
There's money in poverty, meaning a lot of your organizations that, quote unquote, they want to help the poor, defenseless African Americans, they're making money off of that. They make money off of poverty by providing services and things like that.
We saw with FEMA, because they just washed all the funds through illegal immigration. But when there's actually maybe they weren't betting on actually needing to use those funds, and now we need the funds and it's not there. So
it's not there. And again, what they're doing with that, and I'm talking about, I believe, the leadership within the Democratic Party are creating a new electorate, because they're seeing more African Americans want more of their share of the American dream, their piece of the American pie. And so now we have to allow more illegal aliens to come across the border. And in many instances, we're treating them better than we treat our own citizens. I got folks when I've been out campaigning, going door to door. This one lady told me, she said, "Hey, I can't get no help at all. I'm doing my best." But these folks, when she was referring to illegals, they can come over and get free food, free housing, cell phone, health care. And here I am. I'm a citizen and I can't get any help, and I'm doing the best I can. So that is a strategy to create a new electorate. And at the end of the day, if we as African Americans don't open our eyes, we're going to see other communities continue to thrive and do well, and ours stay oppressed and stay down. And that's really one of the main reasons I'm running, because I want to see the entire 6th district move up from the bottom.
I was getting to what's your vision for District 6?
My vision for District 6 is to be wealthy and prosperous, to have a world-class education for every student. To run the 6th district like a business, so that it can be profitable and do well for everybody.
It seems like running it like a nonprofit, like, just give us funds, help us. We can't come up, but please just give us. Almost like a Ukraine ordeal. Like,
there's two ways to move up in this country. One is to have a good paying job. And if you don't have a good paying job, the other thing is to start your own business. And underneath all of that, to make it work, is having a quality education. So jobs, we have to bring good paying jobs to the 6th congressional district. Right now in the district, factories are closed, moved overseas, downtowns are like ghost towns, and folks are having to drive far distances in order to be able to find gainful employment. We're talking an hour, almost an hour and a half.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I know that's prevalent in this area.
Yes. And so the way to change that and turn that around is not to increase the corporate tax rate, which is what the Harris administration, she's proposing a 28% corporate tax. That will.
Is she proposing a capital gains tax as well?
If I'm not mistaken, yes, a capital gains tax as well. And I'm saying, no, let's reduce the corporate tax rate down to 20% base. And then if a company wants an even lower tax rate, then they have to provide a certain amount of jobs that will be comparable to the amount of money they would be saving. And they still come out ahead with a little bit of profit. But they have to create good paying jobs, because I'm telling you, everything starts with a good paying job. If you don't have a job, you don't have any money. And so that's the first. And if you don't have any money, then it's hard for you to do the things that you need to do.
Right.
So that's one of the first things I want to do. The second thing I want to do is make it easier for individuals who want to go into business to have access to capital to be able to start and operate their own business. And I look at the student loan, the guaranteed student loan program through the federal government. You have to fill out a FAFSA. You got to give all this information. And then based on your income and you qualify for the government to back a certain amount of money so that you can be able to go to college. And I'm saying, why can't we have a similar same type program for individuals who want to start a business? You understand? Instead of getting a student loan to go to college, you can get a guaranteed back government loan to be able to start a business.
So you're seeing, as an elected congressman, this is something you want to bring to the table.
That's something that I will bring to the table.
Okay,
so that we can have entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that a lot on the right side right now. This election, I'm hearing that from a lot of right candidates that they want to encourage entrepreneurship within our communities.
Well, I'm saying let's do it like we do FAFSA. You fill the FAFSA out, you go to college, you pay the government back loans. Why can't we have a similar program? Hey, you complete a business plan, you take some classes on entrepreneurship, and hey, you'll have access to the capital you need to start your business, like we do with federal loans for students. I think that would be one of the best ways to promote entrepreneurship and starting a business. Because again, either you got a good paying job or you got to start your own business and work your own business. And I want to make it easier for folks to be able to do both. As it relates to the jobs, we got to bring manufacturing jobs back. And the only way to do that is to make it more profitable for you to build your manufacture whatever your widget is in America and not overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to do that is you have to cut back on some of the regulations that are cumbersome and make it difficult for folks to be able to do what they need to do.
It almost seems like our general election would be just as important as our local this time, because your agenda is matching with the primary, with our candidate's agenda. So it's almost like if they win the top of the ticket and then we win local elections, it would be, we still want to come after regulations and still want to promote prosperity. And we know that that's something that the Democrats don't want to do. So it's seeming like this election is extremely important, that not only do we get the top of the ticket, but that we get the Buckners in there as well.
Yes, well, the Democratic Party, I have lost. Well, either they are economically lacking in knowledge, or they know what they're doing and they're doing it on purpose. Because anytime you tax people more, that causes less incentive. So there has to be what I call a sweet spot with the right tax amount. Because if you tax people too much, then they're going to lose incentive and not work. For example, if you knew if you went to work tomorrow, 70% of your take-home pay was going to go to taxes, how much work would you be incentivized to go do if the government was going to take away 70%? I'm just saying 70, but the more taxes that are placed on people, the less incentive they have. So the way to increase more incentive is to reduce the taxes. And when we're sitting at $36 trillion in national debt, that makes it difficult for our country to invest and do the things that we're doing. But we can spend billions of dollars overseas, but yet we can't fix up our own house.
And I think we just saw that with the port. They didn't have to go to Taft-Hartley, but it was going in that direction because they want more money, because the economy, inflation is out of control. So it's a ripple effect. And, they came and stepped in very swiftly to make sure that they didn't have to go in that Taft-Hartley direction, because they know that that's how that will make them look. So, I mean, Mr. Buckner, first I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
For being as brave as you are. I know as a Black conservative, it is not easy for you to push the message that you're pushing. I know that you believe that it's true. You believe in your message, and I know it's a lot that comes with that. So first, I want to thank you for your audacity and braveness and courage to get out here and do what you're doing. Second, I want to say to anyone that's seeing this video that as I was highlighting, this is the most important election of my lifetime and maybe your lifetime as well. We are looking at a country going in one direction and a country going in another direction. If we get the top of the ticket on down, we will have Donald Trump on down in every community. Just had a long conversation with a Black politician saying that he wants to put prosperity in our communities. Usually this is a conversation that white politicians have to come to our communities to have, because we don't even want to have these conversations because we are so tied down to the Democratic Party. So, Mr. Buckner, is there anything that you would like to say to your future constituents that are on the edge and that will be voting this come November?
Yes. Well, first, Cam, thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to be on your show and to talk directly to the citizens of the 6th Congressional District.
Yes, sir.
And this is the issue. Folks are working really hard. There are people who are playing by the rules. You get up every morning, you go to work, you do what's right, you believe in the Lord, or you worship God however you worship, and you're looking at your community, you're looking at your surroundings, and you're saying, why does it seem like everyone else is prospering and doing well, and I'm not. And I'm here to tell you that the reason you see that is because the policies of the Democratic Party is to keep folks dependent on the government in order to keep them in power. At the end of the day, I really don't believe that those policies are beneficial, because they say they reward folks for staying home when they should be able to get up and go and work and earn the amount of money they need to be able to make it. But see, right now they have allowed through their policies millions of illegal aliens to come across the border. And they are, some, not all, but some are taking jobs. Some, not all, are bringing drugs and poisoning our communities. Some, not all, well, no, I'm going to say all are making demands on goods and services,
right,
that would be for us, but they're not. So you want to know why rent is up $12, $13, $2,000, $2,500? Well, because
20,000 random immigrants in a random small town and leave it to us.
They're looking for housing like
Right.
you. And so it's basic economics. When you have more demand than you have supply, that causes prices to go up.
Right.
So that causes prices to go up in housing. That causes prices to go up with food. You want to know why? When you go in a convenience store and you buy whatever you used to buy is almost 4 or 5 times as expensive as it was, because
just 2019.
Yes, you've got millions of people all making demands on the limited amount of goods and services. So the prices go up. I promise you, if we deport illegals, those who are in this country illegally, you will see prices for things go down immediately, because now, instead of there being 100 people trying to rent one apartment, there would probably now only be 10 people trying to rent.
Right.
Now there's more supply than there is demand. And when you have more supply than you have demand, guess what happens?
Prices
go down. So that needs to happen immediately to provide economic relief for the citizens of this great country. And I pledge to do that as your congressman. I want to see everybody thrive. I want to see everybody doing well. I want to see world-class education, our children learning, our roads beautiful, our I-95 is not beat up with potholes and tore up, but it's beautiful like the rest of the state. I want to see a rail system connecting the 6th congressional district from Florence all the way down to Jasper, so that people can ride in comfort, do the work on the internet while they're on the train, and they don't have to deal with the stress and duress of trying to drive an hour and a half to get to work every day. We can make those things happen, and we can put that rail system so that it's not just coming through the African American community, but it's coming through a place where everybody feel that this would be a good place to put it.
It's funny because at the top of the ticket, they're talking about a light rail system as well. And Kamala Harris actually spent $5 billion, I want to say, on a light rail system in California that has gone absolutely nowhere. So, the number might be high or lower, but it's somewhere around there. And so it's time.
Yes. And I believe that we can do all these things. And I'm going to close with this, Cam. And you say you grew up in the church. I grew up in the church. I'm a born again believer of Jesus Christ. I grew up in the Baptist church, but now I'm in the AME church.
I grew up in AME church.
Okay. So this is what I've learned being in the AME church or any church. which is applicable in government as well. When a good pastor comes to a church, people start coming, the church is flourishing, tithes and offerings is flowing real good. The church is able to do more in the community. More youth come, the pews are full. Because the leader is a good pastor.
Right.
He or she cares about the parishioners, and they're doing the work that they are supposed to do. The exact opposite happens when you bring a bad pastor to a church.
Right.
That pastor, within a few months, now folks stop coming to church. The pews are empty. There's less tithes and offerings. There's confusion and chaos and stress and conflict. And if they're not careful, eventually the church will be totally tore up and they're going to end up closing the doors.
Yeah, because a bad pastor can stay for a long time.
And tear up a church. So if we understand that from the church standpoint, the same thing in government. When you have a good leader in government, good things happen, meaning that leader is taking care of the constituents, the community is prospering, everyone is doing well, not just the leader, but the people he serves is doing well, the community is safer, there are jobs, there's prosperity, and things are going well. The exact opposite happens when you bring elect a bad leader in office. There's chaos, there's confusion, there's corruption. Folks are struggling economically and not being able to provide for their family the way that they want. So you ask yourself, in the last 4 years, have things gotten better for you?
No.
The answer is no. Is the world safer?
No. You're looking at World War III.
Are we closer as a country? Or are we more divided?
More divided than ever.
Are there more finances or more economic growth and development happening or less? And the answer is less. So you have to look at who's been our leader. And in the 6th congressional district, it's been James Clyburn. And on the national level, it's been the Biden-Harris administration. They can't point to anything that has said this has been beneficial economically for the people.
They'll actually run from it. Anything that they've done, they'll run from it. They'll pretend that they didn't even do it. Is that they have nothing that they can show for these last 4 years that has benefited any major group of people except immigrants, illegal immigrants.
Illegal immigrants and those who make money off of the poor.
The bureaucrats. Yeah, I agree.
You understand? Because there's folks that make money off the poor by getting grants, by saying they care about poor people or they care about the disadvantaged or minority groups. But in actuality, they don't care at all.
Yeah, you'll see that in these Black Democrat spaces, a lot of nonprofits and things like that. We saw that with Black Lives Matter. They had a lot of hype, but come to find out they stole the money. So that's been very prevalent, and I think they play off the Black church. So I know exactly what you're hinting at. That's very prevalent in our community.
Yeah, and then the argument is, well, the Republicans ain't doing any better. I hear that too, and all I say is, and this is my closing: vote for the person, not the party. If you want to see better in your community, you have to choose your leaders wisely.
Yeah, but just a small add-on to that, because if people are watching this, because I hear that statement in our community as a lot as well, and Black people, we should start being honest with ourselves. Let's look at Florida. That is a Republican state, up and down. That state is thriving since the pandemic. That state is thriving almost like a Dubai. Let's look at California, the most beautiful piece of land almost on earth. That state is in despair. Poverty has taking over that state like no one could believe. And that is a Democrat-ran state, not just a city like LA. The whole state is Democrat. It's Gavin Newsom state. If you look at Atlanta, a blue city inside of a red state, ran by blacks, Democrats, it is impoverished like a third world country. So, I mean, even when they say those type of things, just to maybe want to believe that it's true, to make it seem like we haven't been led astray this much, I think you still can't, the Republicans still beat them there. No party is perfect, but the Republicans have the Republicans have set a playing field even enough for a black person to thrive, while a Democrat will come with nothing but regulations and things to encourage the opposite.
I agree with you 100%. And again, it's the policies. It's policies. The policies of the Democrat and their folks in the Democrat. You know, I want to believe that their heart is in the right place. You know, right. I want to believe that they sincerely want to help. Right. But their policies don't result in more freedom and opportunity. Their policies result in more slavery and less opportunities, because the more freedom you have, the more opportunities you have, the more wealth you have. The less freedom you have, the less opportunities you have, the less wealth you have. So when you're constantly taxing and adding in taxes and regulations and bringing in folks who are not citizens and treating them better than you have your own citizens, and when you pretend like you care, but when you really don't, because if you really cared, you would see, for example, the Clinton crime bill. My opponent, he voted in favor of that.
Right.
This was in the mid 90s,
right.
Early 90s. As a result of that, it opened the floodgates of the prison population, and the majority of that prison population was African-American men.
And didn't the Clinton administration do the thing with the loans for the houses that they were just giving out?
Yeah, that was the other issue. They believe that everybody should own a house.
Yeah,
that's a good thing to aspire to, but they were making loans, no income, no job, no nothing. You know, put people in a house, and then guess what? After a while, when they couldn't afford the house would go into foreclosure. People would lose their house because they couldn't afford it to start with. Mm-hmm. And that was that caused the one of the first housing bubbles.
But you don't hear Clyburn and you don't hear these black Democrats ever criticize anything they've done, ever even come up with a new idea that may be a better resolution to it. It's almost like they're just with the destruction. And I agree that I would like to believe that there are people in these positions who have a heart in the right place, but it's almost hard to believe it when you look at the history.
Well, all you have to do is just look at your own household. Are you better? I know Ronald Reagan said this, but it's still a quote. Are you better off today,
right,
than you were 4 years ago? Is it easier for you to do the things you need to do, or is it more difficult?
Right.
Are you able to buy and invest and save and provide for your family? Is it easier for you to do that now, or is it more difficult?
Right.
And the reason for many people that it is more difficult is because of the policies that have been set forth by the current administration, the Democratic Party, and their policies. Their policies do not tend to result in progress and prosperity, but more dependence and more crime, more of everything that is not beneficial, but more detrimental to people. And as soon as folks begin to see, then the change will come. And it's happening right now, because there are more people who are not identifying themselves as a Democrat.
Right.
They are identifying themselves as an independent.
Right. I agree.
And that's huge. That's huge.
Mr. Buckner, I don't believe that this will be our last conversation.
Well, listen, I enjoyed it very much. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I'm looking forward to hearing more of you, seeing more of you, and replacing the congressman of District 6 here in South Carolina.
Tell everybody to go to my website, voteforduke.com, vote for Duke, VOTEFORDUK, voteforduke.com. Make a donation, sign up and volunteer. We just have a few more weeks before there's going to be a huge change, and this is going to be the biggest win. It's going to be a shot heard around the world, because it's going to say that we are tired of being sick and tired. We want better for ourselves and for our children. And it's time for change in the 6th district. Again, I'm Duke Buckner. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Voteforduke.com.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.